Behind me is the Jackson Mansion. On July the 14th, 1863, this is one of the spots that Morgan's men, when they branched out into areas to try to find food, fresh horses, and of course they would filter around for any kind of valuables for money-wise. This is one of the stops. This was one of the elite homes in this area. And the Jackson family had a lot of property here. The house, and behind us is the stables. I don't know how many horses Morgan's men stole from here, but this was where a very small group of his men was pillaging for anything of value. And they arrived here, they stayed here a very short amount of time. They had come through with a bunch of Morgan's men. Others branched off to Batavia. This group, some of them went off to Amelia, and then they all met, and some of them went to New Richmond, spent the night down there, and another group went up to Bethel. And so they were branching out all over the county, but this spot in Glen Este was a very key spot of their stopping, especially for getting horses. And Glen Este at the time in 1863, excuse me, was not known as Glen Este. It didn't pick up that name until 1878. This was just Union Township primarily. The road behind you, Shane, is old State Route 74, later State Route 32, the Cincinnati-Batavia Pike, the Cincinnati-Williamsburg Pike. But what it originally was, this road was laid out in 1798, and it was a dirt road. It was laid out by a guy named John Donnells and known as Donnell's Trace. It went from Ohio's first state capital in Chillicothe to Fort Washington, Cincinnati, and Morgan's men used this road quite a bit through the central part of the county to travel around. So this was a very vital road at one time. And here, where the road becomes narrow and drops off as a glen, and that's where the part of the word Glen Este came from. And the land to the east of us on the Batavia side, it was much of it was owned by a man named David K. Este, who owned the railroad that went through here, the Cincinnati, Georgetown, and Portsmouth. And that's where the town of Glen Este picked up its name. And there's a tavern still standing here also next to a lake, which is still known as Jackson's Lake. So the name Jackson continues to exist to this day. In more recent times, Charles Jackson in the 1950s and 60s and early 70s was a state representative from Clermont County and a Clermont County native.